Sports manga might be undefeated. This is a tweet I made a while ago on Twitter that had some cool interaction, and I thought why not do a video of me basically telling you why sports manga / anime are the most consistent subgenre in the medium. It's one of the few genres where I feel like I can get a little bit of everything and rarely be disappointed. I'm also a big character guy, meaning there are some series where I might not be the biggest fan of, but I could take away 1 to 2 characters that I love enough to keep me coming back to the series. With sports manga, it's the best of both worlds. If you like a sport, whether it be baseball, basketball, or football, a lot of the times people get invested in the story, and there's always a chain of characters you'll like and want to see at the end of the character arc. And as for the games, I look at those as battles or fights. When done correctly and paced properly, they can pay off really well. A game in anime or manga form can be the most hype shit you've ever read. Balancing the game, character development, raw moments, hype emotions, it's the complete package of a manga experience. The cool part about this genre is that it introduces people to sports around the world, making sports like basketball popular in Japan, especially in the 90s. I first got into soccer through manga, then the World Cup, and at the time of this recording, I'm watching the 2024 Euros. So I want to talk about a couple of series that whether you may know or may not know, that might get you into checking out the genre. The first series is Blue Lock. Now Blue Lock has gained a ton of popularity ever since the anime came out. Although even before then, it was widely known from most people who read the manga. But if you don't know what it is, long story short, Blue Lock is a program to create Japan's best striker that is good enough to lead them to a World Cup. Which, yes, in fact, Japan has never won a World Cup. So Ego, the man in charge, who was funded by the Japanese government, gathers 100 of the best strikers in high school, where they have crazy training, games, and preparation to being the best in the world, while developing a strong ego. But people can get eliminated, almost like a Squid Games sort of nature. The main character, Isagi, is the definition of, well, let's just say kind of mid at this point. No, that's not an insult, that's basically what he is. But he lies to you as if he's worse than that. Meanwhile, he's a goddamn maniac who adapts to everything around him. And by adapting, he means other people's play styles, the way they score, the way they defend, their mentality. He adapts to all of that. Sometimes for the sake of the plot, it can get a little bit ridiculous, but nonetheless, he is a very good MC. That is a very different approach to the sports genre. The best aspects of Blue Lock are the characters and their philosophies, and of course the games, or we'll say matches, are very good as well. I'd be here all day if I listed all my favorite or notable characters, but I'm just going to stick with really 4 that are kind of the example of Blue Lock as a whole. First, the King Shoeibaru, who's my GOAT. So you can imagine a certain game I have a love-hate relationship with. He's the definition of egotistical, and on paper is the ideal striker Ego Jinpachi would want. He has an insane work ethic because he's hell-bent on being the top of the food chain. He has some of the most badass and hype moments in the entire series, but what makes his moments so special is the way Baro has to be torn down in the beginning in order to evolve. Baro's worst enemy is himself. He lets his selfish ego get in the way of his own development, so much so he knows his habits are bad, but he continues to do it because he'd rather lose and go out on his own terms rather than leave it up to somebody else. While this sounds adamant and stupid, it's just how Baro moves. He's learning how to use his ego and tyrant demeanor in a way to not only help himself, but the people around him that makes his development feel so impactful. He goes from a self-destructive monster that is wasting his talent to the absolute king of the field that his teammates respect and opponents fear. Itoshi Rin, who has a younger brother complex with his older brother Sai, who is his main motivation as to why he's an all-around beast. Some people love his character, some people hate him. It really depends on how you view his perspectives of things, or if you just hate the OD edginess sometimes of him. His ego is centered around eclipsing his brother and being better than his brother. Even though they play different positions, he wants to show that he is the better brother, the better striker, and he's what Sei was supposed to be. Shido Ryusei, who for a while has been viewed as Rin's counterpart, yet he plays completely different as a striker. Rin is more of a control the ball, all-around striker. He'll score on his own, while Shido is more of a poacher. Or if you don't know what that is, a poacher is someone who is excellent at getting into the box and attack positions for a midfielder to feed them and instantly score. Shido's entire reason for playing soccer is the most ridiculous of them all. Not only does he want to be the best, but he mainly wants his soccer to feel like nirvana, or this ecstasy state where he's surpassing his imagination of what he can do, we'll say. Now, you might have seen some of his wild dialogue randomly on social media, but, don't be fooled too much. He's a raw ass character because in the games, Shido steals the show every single time. And of course, last we got Nagi Seishido, who is such a good side character. He has his own spin-off manga that's actually really good and better than anyone expected it to be. He's the usual lazy, but actually a really good prodigy character. But his laziness and lack of motivation at times becomes his obstacle for him. Similar to Baro, Nagi is his worst enemy, as his ego is very subtle, but Nagi needs people to bring the best out of him almost every time, to a point where eventually he's going to have to be able to do some of those spectacular goals and plays by his own self-motivation. Now, when it comes to Haikyuu, this one is a special case because I originally tried watching Haikyuu on 2 to 3 separate occasions, and I was bored by episode 5 each time. But something last year told me to give it one more shot, and fuck am I glad that I did. Because Haikyuu is the definition of doing simple writing at its best. The story of the MC Hinata is of the underdog, who is undersized for his position, yet he becomes one of the best players in the series. Hinata is the definition of a shonen protagonist, never give up mentality, even at his worst moments, and strives to reach his goals. But Karasuno as a team makes every character feel better than they would on their own. It's an overall feel-good story with arguably the best adaptation for a sports manga so far in the anime. And this is one of the few cases where I was not really a fan of volleyball or had any knowledge of a pro volleyball game or anything like that. But after watching Haikyuu, this was gas to me, mainly because volleyball is a very fast-paced sport that's easy to understand. The games are animated great and paced pretty much perfect, and do a great job of showing Karasuno's progress as a team, with not every game being this overdone or over emotional close game. Sometimes they win confidently. The relationships between each teammate is highlighted a lot for practically each team they showcase, and they play out pretty realistic. And of course, you have people who are closer on the team with compared to others. Best dynamics are Hinata and Kageyama, and how to be a great duo without stifling each other's potential is pretty dope. Oikawa and Iwazumi, a natural talent with a high ceiling, but you have someone like Iwazumi that can bring them down to reality and lead the rest of the team, while telling Oikawa at the same time when to turn it up and take over. And you have a Wakatoshi and a Tendo dynamic, which is all about emotion but in a different sense. Waka is a damn near robotic person, and he goes about it in the way he plays as well. He's a beast that you pretty much can't stop. You have to contain him as best as possible, but he doesn't showboat or really talk all that much in between games. Meanwhile, Tendo is the complete opposite. He talks the most out of anyone between both teams and is very expressive, almost clown-like. But he leads the blockers and defense in general. Tendo lets Waka open up about himself more than anyone else on the team, and Tendo mostly marvels at how good Waka is, and it forces him to want to make sure Shiwatorizawa wins as much as possible. Honestly, for anime side of things, I'd say Haikyuu is the best starter pack show to see if you'll enjoy this type of genre. Basketball is my favorite sport, and that probably won't change anytime soon. There are 3 standout basketball anime, with Kuroko no Basket, a power fantasy basketball series that has a guy shooting full court freaking shots and a guy who can do one dribble and break ankles because he can see the future. But it's a very fun and cool series nonetheless, especially if you turn your brain off at certain points. And yes, before you ask, this is an Almine household. Hiro no Sora is slept on and is actually pretty good as a story. It takes a while to hit its stride, but I personally enjoy it. The games are at its weak point at times, but the underdog group of delinquents who all at some point fall in love with the game, whether for good or bad reasons, can draw you into this team. I would definitely give the anime a try and then move on to the manga if you enjoy it enough, because the manga later on gets better with the artwork. But the best for me is hands down Slam Dunk by Takehiko Inoue, my GOAT. He created one of the most defining manga in not only shonen, but manga history. Slam Dunk will be a catalyst in making basketball more popular in Japan, with the movie that came out about a year ago, which is amazing, by the way. Unfortunately, I can only recommend manga readers to watch it, but it was still impactful to this day as one of the higher selling movies for anime, despite its age, and in turn, the Slam Dunk manga sold more copies because of it. The reason this manga is so good is because it takes the best of both worlds. People who love basketball and people who want to get into it. Sakuragi is the MC of this story. He's perfect for it because he's the delinquent who gets into basketball for a girl, but in turn, playing through the game and learning about his teammates around him and their stories, he grows to love the game. And if you're new to basketball, you're learning alongside him. Meanwhile, his teammates Akagi, Mitsui, Miyagi, and Rukawa already know everything. It's a comical 90s shonen manga, which was very common back then, but underneath it, you can feel his passion for basketball resonating throughout the entire story, from every character that is associated with Shohoku. The second the national tournament arc starts, the quality of writing is second to none. I was emotionally hooked from every page and panel in each chapter, and the character writing is phenomenal, even from characters who are minor in terms of importance, and ones who are just background characters. They each have their own moments that help build the story. It shows everything up until now played a role into everyone's development. Sakuragi and Rukawa's dynamic as the beacon of how far this can go is iconic and is looked at as a predecessor to the rivalries you see all throughout the shonen genre. At some point, I plan on dedicating an entire video to this manga, but I recommend anyone to read it and then watch the movie. Eye Shield 21. It's similar to Slam Dunk, where if you enjoy reading manga, I would highly recommend doing so for this series. The art is done by Yusuke Murata, who also draws the current One Punch Man manga, which, if you know anything about Murata, his art looks freaking amazing. I'm gonna just post some panels here in case you don't know. Eye Shield 21 anime looks outdated and doesn't really have a good production behind it, in my opinion. Now, as for the series, it's similar of the realm to Kuroko no Basket, because you definitely have to subvert your expectations of realism, because there are moments that are just inhumanly possible to happen on the field. And if you know anything about American football, you have an offensive side with a specific team and a defensive side with a specific team and a special teams. Well, considering there's no way a mangaka is gonna make that many characters per team, the main characters of each team play both sides of the ball. Sina Kobayakawa is the MC, a short and shy but ridiculously fast person, even dubbed Golden Legs, because his speed will be treasured for Demon High School. The Devil Bats are a team that started out as a two-man club that eventually blossoms into a full team. The way they get people to join this team is interesting, because it can go from a heartfelt moment of a character wanting to prove his worth by joining his team and helping them reach their goal of going to the Winter Bowl, to some characters who join because they have nothing else going for them or just downright threaten to join. But eventually everyone unites and they become a great team. The way the football games are depicted are as if they are a game of war. Strategy and game planning are valued just as highly as physical specimens that can just out-talent everybody. The pacing for the games are actually really consistent and don't feel like a drag at all. The characters and the writing is good and uniquely different to each character, to where it doesn't feel like each character has the same archetype or motive. The standout character to me is easily Manta. It's very relatable to have a character who has a passion for one thing and it doesn't turn out the way you wish for it, but he can take his talents and use them in another avenue. At first, he's hesitant to go because he doesn't want to give up his original dream and goal. Going from wanting to do baseball because your idol played the game to playing football and eventually wanting to be the best receiver is cool. And I know people who've been through that before. And what makes it even better is that his character arc conclusion in the last two arcs is honestly one of the best in the whole genre. If you want a badass character, you've got two. Hiruma, who is the captain of the Devil Bats. And what makes Hiruma different is that he's not special physically or even like a generational talent at the QB position, but his intelligence and out-of-the-box play sets him apart from everyone. From exploiting weaknesses, whether actual game weaknesses or just mental weaknesses, or using mind games, Hiruma is the backbone of the team and adds a lot of intimidation to facing opponents. He can be a bit much, but he's got some value to him. His former teammate Agon is the opposite. He's just as much as a demon as Hiruma is, except he's a generational talent on offense and defense, and even plays QB at times. He's extremely cocky and aggressive and has his own character arc with his brother that you can kind of tell where it's going. But for me, this motherfucker is just cool, from the drip to the feel. Definitely the best antagonistic force in the series that is built up well. Now, I will warn you, there is some controversy with one of the characters by the name of Panther, and judging by this panel here, You can probably tell what it's about, so I'll just leave it to the reader discretion on that. However, ISO 21 is a very underrated series and has some great characters you can attach yourself to. I think if it ever got a good adaptation, it would be in the limelight a little bit more. If there was one anime that I can honestly say has a little bit of everything, from a great MC, a great cast of characters, amazing fights, immersive character arcs, a fire anime adaptation, and even better manga, you would get Hajime no Ippo. When I say a series has soul, this is it. Where you feel the manga spirit all throughout the chapters, and he hits every key point of the story in moments within them almost perfectly. Ippo Makanouchi from season 1 to 3 in the anime is a kid who goes from being bullied to a boxer. However, he started to love boxing from watching old matches and magazines in them, and he started to feel that larger than life aspect from him, and he liked the craft of it. But his main motivation is to help his mother with the family business, a fishing business inspired by his late dad. Now, following Ippo's journey and growth as a kid trying to balance life and boxing feels like you're there with him. Simply because Morikawa knows how to give Ippo realistic issues for someone who's growing from a high school graduate to a young man. Now, Morikawa, being a boxing fan, goes into everything with Ippo, from his fighting style, his gear, mentality, his work ethic, how he learns, and his relationship with Coach Kamigawa. He checks all the boxes. In the anime, my favorite Ippo moment has to be him versus Sendo in both their fights. It feels like both boxers who were rookies grew whether they won or lost. I won't say too much for the manga because I don't want to spoil it and I want some people to go in blind. But when you read further in the manga, you'll notice Ippo's character arc is going to hit the hardest roadblocks he's ever had. Something that will not only affect him, but the gym. It's Morikawa's best writing for a character and puts his main character in the most emotionally toxic situations he'll ever be in for his eventual rise for an even better Ippo. With over 1,000 chapters, which is more than One Piece, I'm just saying not better than One Piece, there are characters who get like their own MC time to shine, where they get a decent chunk of chapters focused on their own arc. Best case is Mashiba currently in the manga, from an antagonist to one of the most beloved characters in the series and arguably a top 3 character in the series. If you specifically talk about writing, if you want to see a villain turn hero story, look at the Mashiba arc, because he has to battle his own demons and habits as a boxer and as a person to give his sister a better life, considering he had to be her big brother and guardian with their parents being gone. His fighting style being Detroit style shell, but more aggressive with flicker jabs is pretty. And Mashiba versus Sawamura is a must read fight you have to read at least once in your life. Takamura, the brolic 80s, 90s character that is manly as hell, but also very goofy. Now, even though Takamura has his sus moments and just oddball characteristics at times, the appeal is that he's a man that was born strong and his coach brought his strength to the world level. On the surface, he's a delinquent young adult that is overly cocky and only cares about himself. Yet in the ring, he's highly intelligent and embraces the challenge as he fights for his coach and to accomplish both their dreams. Takamura versus Bryan is a spectacle in season 2, and that fight, when I watched it for the first time, left me speechless because just how epic it is. I mean, from the OSTs to the animation, just the brutality, and everything. In the manga, he has some other great matches, one arguably his best to some people, but now he's the world-known champion trying to conquer 6 divisions in a legendary fashion. And that eventual heavyweight fight, it might be one of the best to go down in manga. Now, Sendo is my fucking guy. The prideful rival character done correctly. His boxing style is described as archaic. He's very old-fashioned in approach, but his intensity and ferocity is so top class that it works. And he instills fear in his opponent because even though you know what he's gonna do, it's how he goes about it you can't exactly game plan for. Because even though he's been named the Rocky and Tiger of Naniwa, being called boxing's saber-tooth tiger is raw as hell. One of the more simple characters in Ippo, but also the most authentic. The anime also does a great job showing how aggressive Sendo in comparison is to Ippo, who has a similar style. But in the manga, Sendo versus Alfred is the one form. If you haven't read the manga, or you're not caught up yet, and you're a Sendo fan, you might want to peep the manga, but Sendo is on the verge of having one of the greatest fights in the series. A plus for the anime is that all 3 seasons are done by Studio Madhouse, so even the older season 1 animation looks really good and fluid. As for the manga, I will give a disclaimer that there will be chapters that are under 10 pages because Morikawa is an old man and he can't do weekly 24-page chapters all the time. So he takes frequent breaks, but as a series overall, I'll say this is the best long-running manga I've ever read, regardless of the genre. It's one of the best journeys you can read, especially if you're looking for an MC you want to root for. Seeing Ippo go from a novice to a strong fighter to a champion to a teacher, and eventually being one of the faces of boxing in his division is special. Those are some of the key sports manga that kind of stood out for me. I wanted to pick something that was different for each sport. Hopefully some people were interested enough to want to go and check these out. I'm just going to say all of these is like between nothing lower than an 8, if I'm being honest. Because this genre more hits than misses, and that still is going to this day. Leave a like, subscribe if you enjoyed. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.